In this lecture, we will write code for the row entity class, row repository interface, and some unit tests for the row repository. So we will create a new Java class that maps to the rows table in the database. And this table has 3 columns: ID, name, and description. Note that in this course, we won't create the tables manually. Instead, we will use Hibernate forward engineering feature that is able to create the tables automatically from Java code from entity classes. That's why we need to set the property Hibernate DDL auto in the Spring Boot configuration file. Come back to the IDE and open the ShopMe Common project here. We will put the entity classes in this ShopMe Common project because the entity classes are shared between the ShopMe backend and ShopMe frontend projects. And open the Maven project file of the ShopMe Common project, and you can see it declares the dependency for Spring Boot Starter Data API already here. Let's change the package name com.shopme to com.shopme.common.entity. So right click and refactor, rename, and change the package name to com.shopme.common.entity. And create a new Java class here, the first entity class in our project. Role, finish. And in this entity class, we need to use the entity annotation from JPA to indicate that this class is an entity class. And to map with the table in the database, we need to use the table annotation here with the name equal to the actual name of the table in the database, rows. And here in this entity class, we need to declare the instance fields that map to the corresponding columns in the database table. So the first instance field is type integer with the name is ID. The second field is for name, and the third field is description. And generate getter and setter methods for these 3 instance fields. Right click, source, generate getters and setters here. Select all, generate. Okay, and reformat the code. Right click, source, format. Okay, save the changes. And then we need to use some JPA annotations for the instance fields here to map these fields to the corresponding columns in the rows table. For the ID field, we need to use the ID annotation here, and the generated value annotation to tell Hibernate that the values of this field will be generated automatically with the strategy is generation type identity. And for the field name, we need to use the annotation column. This field name has the same name with the column in the database, but we need to specify the length. Maximum length of this field is about 40 characters, and nullable equal false, meaning that the underlying column in the database is not null, and unique equal true, meaning that no 2 rows have the same name. And similarly, we need to use the column annotation for the description field with the length is 150 character, nullable equal false. That's it, very simple for our first entity class in the project. And go to the ShopMe backend project, Java code here, and we will put the row entity class in this project. So create a new Java package for the user module. the package name is com.shopme.admin.user for the user management module. Finish. And create a new interface here for the row repository interface. Name is row repository. Finish. And use the annotation repository for this interface. And we have this interface extends the CRUD repository interface provided by Spring Data JPA here, with the type parameter T is for the entity type, which is row, and the type of the ID field is integer, because in the entity class row we have the type of the entity of the ID field is integer here. Okay, and import the row class from the ShopMe common package. You can see we don't have any references to the row class in the ShopMe common project. So to fix the issue, we need to go to the ShopMe web parent project, open this Maven project file, and we need to declare the dependency to the ShopMe common project here. So both the project ShopMe backend and ShopMe frontend, we inherit this dependency. Okay, so here we need to declare the dependency for the ShopMe common project here, and open the ShopMe common project and copy the project information here, group ID and artifact ID, and paste here. Okay, and save the change. And we need to review the project. Sorry, we need to specify the version. So also copy the version number here. Okay. Okay, and come back to the row repository interface here. And now we can import the row class from the ShopMe common project here. You can see it suggests import row from the com.shopme.common.entity package here. Okay. Then we are ready to write our first unit test class. So go to the ShopMe backend project under the Java test package here. Change the package name to com.shopme.admin.user for the user module. Refactor, rename com.shopme.admin.user, and we put the first unit test class here in this package, new class, and the test class name is row repository test. Finished. And we need to use the annotation data JPA test to leverage the data JPA test of Spring Data JPA. And we run the unit test methods against the real database, so we need to use this annotation auto configure test database, because by default Spring Data JPA we run the test against an in-memory database. So if you want to test with the real database, we need to override the default configuration, replace equal none. So it we run the test against the real database. And in this test class, we need to have a reference to the row repository with the auto while annotation to let Spring Framework inject an instance of the row repository interface here. repo. And the first test method with the test annotation that comes from the package .junit.jupyter.api. That means we are using the unit 5 or the unit Jupyter. Public void test create first row. Import this test annotation. And we are going to proceed the first row object with the name as admin and description is manage everything. So we create a new row object here. Row admin equal new row. And for convenience, we should write a constructor that takes the row name in the row entity class here. So you can right click source generate constructor using fields and select only the field name, also description. Okay. And another constructor that takes only a row name, and also empty no argument constructor that is required by Hibernate. Okay. And now we can pass the row name and row description here, admin. Manage everything. And then to persist this row object into the database, we can use the method of the row repository report.save and passing the row object row admin. And this save method returns persistent row object, so we can assign the return value to a new row object row saved row for the purpose of assertion here. So we can use the assert method. You can see it suggests various assertion methods that come from AssertJ library instead of the traditional assertion method come from JUnit. Assert that saved row get id is greater than 0, meaning that the row object has been actually persisted into the database. And you can see it imports the assert that method, static method from the AssertJ library, which is a Fluent assertion library API. So far so good, and we are ready to run this first unit test method. But before that, let me switch to the MySQL Workbench, and you can see in the ShopMe database here we have no tables at all, refresh all, and the database is empty. Now let's run this test method. Right click on the method name and click run as JUnit test. We got an error here, failed to load driver class. That means we need to declare dependency for MySQL JDBC driver. Okay, so go to the project and open the ShopMe web parent project project file .xml here, and here we need to specify the dependency for MySQL JDBC driver. Right click on the project. Yeah, we can specify dependency for MySQL JDBC driver dependency with the group ID is MySQL. and artifact ID is MySQL dash connector dash Java. Sorry, the group ID is just MySQL, and the scope of the JDBC driver should be runtime instead of the default one is compile, and save the change. And check the Maven dependency section here for the MySQL JDBC driver. You can see MySQL JDBC driver version 8 here. Perfect. Now let's run the test method again. Right click, run. Now we come to another error, and you can see not a managed type. The class com.shopme.common.entity.row. Don't worry, I will show you how to fix this error in the Shopme backend project. Open the main class Shopme backend application here, and you can see because this main class is in the package com.shopme.admin, and whereas the entity class row is in the package com.shopme.common.entity. So the Spring Boot application could not discover that entity class, so we need to specify the annotation entity scan here with an array of package name. The first package is com.shopme.common.entity for the entity classes, and the second package name is for the user module com.shopme.admin.user. Okay, and run the test method again. Run. Okay, you can see the test has passed successfully with the green check mark here. And look at the console view, you can see the SQL statements create table rows here with the columns ID, description, name, and it also executes the SQL insert statement to insert the first row into the rows table here. But you can also see that it rolled back the transaction here, because by default Spring Data JPA test we roll back the transaction after the test execution. Now let's switch to MySQL Workbench, refresh the database, and you can see the table rows got created here. Perfect, right? With the columns ID, description, and name. And right click on the table name and alter table to see the structure, and you can see the ID column, data type integer, primary key not null, auto increment, and the length of the description column is varchar 150 characters, and name is varchar 40 characters, not null, and the name is unique. Perfect, right? So as you have seen, we don't have to manually create the table in the database. Just create the entity class and then run the unit test, and Hibernate we generate the table, create the table in the database automatically. Okay, now we need to modify the test class here to tell Spring Data JPA test to commit the changes after running the test by using the rollback annotation here with the argument false here. Now run the test method again, and this time Hibernate won't create the table. It will execute the SQL insert statement, and you can see there's only the SQL insert statement that insert a new row into the rows table here, and you can see it committed the transaction for the test here. Now right click on the rows table and select rows, and you can see the first row got inserted here with name is admin and description manage everything here, and you can see the ID number is 2 because the previous ID number 1 was inserted but was rollback. To reset the ID, we can truncate the table, that we erase all the data and reset the ID from starting truncate table. Truncate. Okay, now execute this SQL select statement again, and you can see no rows. And now let's run the test method again. Run. And you see it prints a SQL insert statement. And now let me refresh the rows table in MySQL Workbench here, and you can see the first row got inserted with the ID 1, name admin, description manage everything. Perfect, right? Next, I'm going to show you how to write the second test method that will persist the rest 4 rows into the database: salesperson, editor, shipper, and assistant. Come back to the project and write the second test method in the row repository test class here. The second test method is public void test create rest rows. We can copy the second row is the row salesperson. A salesperson can name is row salesperson. A salesperson can manage product price, customers, shipping, orders, and sales report. And the next row is for the row editor. So we can copy, paste, and modify here. The next row is row editor. An editor user can manage categories, brands, products, articles, and menus. Articles and menus. And the next row is the row shipper. New row. Row name is shipper, and row description is manage view products, view orders, and update order status. And the last row is for the row assistant. New row assistant is a row name, and description is manage questions and reviews of products. And then we can use another method of the row repository to persist all these 4 row objects at once in batch repo. You can see the method save all here, and it takes an object of type iterable. So we can use the class interface list of method here. Row salesperson, row editor, row shipper and row assistant. The op method of the list interface, it is the default method of the list interface. We return an immutable list containing the specified object elements here, and we don't need to use assertion for this test method. So this method we success by default. Okay, save the changes and run this test method. Run as JUnit test. Okay, the test succeeded, and you can see in the console view it prints 4 SQL insert statements that insert 4 row objects, 4 rows into the rows table. Perfect, right? And now let's verify the database in MySQL Workbench. Here, execute select statement, and you can see we have the other 4 rows inserted here for the rows salesperson, editor, shipper, and assistant. Perfect.